Hey, this is Jon Gordon with Positive You, and today my guest is Ed Mylett. Ed, how you doing?
Blessed, brother. Great to be with you. So good to see your face.
Man, great to see yours. It's great to have the legend on the podcast. I'm excited you're here.
The legend. Well, thank you very much. That's nice to hear.
Well, I feel that way about you. And I want to know, I know a lot of people probably have a lot of interest in your background. Growing up, where did you grow up and what did you want to be when you grew up?
I want to be a baseball player. I still do. It's going to happen. I'm telling you. I turned 50 in April, and there's never been a 50-year-old to play center field for the Red Sox. So I feel like I've got a shot still. But I grew up in Southern California, middle class, lower middle class, good family, loving, good family. But like most families, there was dysfunction behind our front door if you went into the living room. And our dysfunction took its form of my dad was an alcoholic. I think some drugs too, growing up. My dad eventually, as you know, because we're friends, got sober and was sober for 35 years before he passed away, which was recently. But I grew up with a lot of love, but a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress. And I probably wasn't a little boy very long. I was the oldest boy of 4. So I think if anybody relates to that, I just had to grow up real quickly just to emotionally support myself and my sisters and my mom.
It makes a lot of sense to have to go through that and then ultimately to have to mature and look out for people, which is amazing because you think that's part of what you're so driven by now because you encourage so many people, you love helping people. Do you think that's part of it?
I haven't never thought about it till you just said it that way. But, everything I do believe, God's so good. Everything is always working for us and not against us. Or it's not I also believe it's happening for us and not to us. I don't think life happens to us. But I can say that one of the blessings of having a dad who was an alcoholic was, one, I wanted to care for people young. But the other part of it was a lot of the things that I use to this day that are a couple of my gifts, because we all have a few, is I read people really well and I connect with them well. And the reason was I didn't know which dad was going to come through the front door at a 4 or 5-year-old little boy. And I had to read him. Is it happy, sober dad who's going to play catch with me? Or is it, dad's had some drinks dad who's a little bit angry, distant, maybe a little bit aggressive. And so I'd read my own dad through the front door at 4 or 5 years old. And that allowed me as an adult to be present with people and to be in their world, not mine most of the time. That becomes very naturally to me. And that's one of the great gifts of my dad's alcoholism was that for sure.
Talk to us about school. Where did you go to college? Did you go to college and what happened after that?
I did. I got a full ride baseball scholarship to University of the Pacific. I had a really significant injury happen when I was there. I got hit with a pitch and a tumor formed on my right calf. And they had to take part of my calf out when they took the tumor. Then the tumor grew back. They did it again. And so I was down to very little bit of my gastrocnemius left in my right leg. And so we left the tumor in there. It's not cancerous. It's there to this day. It's been sitting in there for about 30 years now. And then I got, ironically too, I tell you, I was so bad at business. And I was so bad at math. I had to find out after my freshman year, what major can I take where there's no science or math so I can get a degree? And the counselor says you could be a communications major. There's a couple math classes of communication, but if you're a broadcast communication major, there aren't any. Sign me up for that, even though my fear was public speaking. The irony, John, that 30 years later, I utilized that degree by starting a podcast because of some business and personal development success, to this day is mind-blowing. And that's just another example for my life of God working for me at the time and not knowing it. In hindsight, we always see the favor of what's happened in our lives, even the difficult times. But if you'd have told me I took broadcasting because I couldn't pass basic, algebra in college, that's just crazy to me. But now I use it on a daily basis, doing what I do.
That is unbelievable. What a great story to use that experience when you're younger and God had a plan for what you're doing now. We couldn't see it at the time, but now you clearly see it.
3 decades later, I didn't use it once, not one time. Once I walked off that campus, did I ever have anything to do with broadcasting or think about broadcasting of any type? I've always had a deep voice, that was going for me. But beyond that, there was nothing. And now I host, my show.
What was it like, though, when you got injured and you really couldn't play the game that you love? How did you move past that in your life? And what did you learn from that?
Very hard. I think I probably spent 3 or 4 years telling that old story and lamenting it. Again, blessing in it. During that time, we had a very unique man. He didn't get famous, but he was our team psychologist. And he's like, well, if you can't hit, it's my sophomore year, why don't you learn to visualize? And Ed, there's this thing in your brain called the reticular activating system, and I'm writing on it. He's just a guy getting his master's degree. And so I spent months and months learning to visualize in great detail. And he'd say, okay, so break down the visualization for me. And I'd say, well, yeah, I can see the ball coming in. He goes, no. Are you seeing it from the center field camera or from behind home plate? And I'd say, well, I don't know. He goes, well, I want you to know. I go, okay, it's from behind home plate. Can you see him release the baseball? And then he could get me to see him releasing the baseball. And I say this to you because the specificity with the way we dream and visualize has everything to do with us making it happen in our lives. Everyone goes, I'm a dreamer. How good a dreamer are you? How proficient? How big's that muscle? And it got all the way to the point where he would say, can you see the stitches on the ball? And I'm like, I can see them. He goes, is it spinning? Do you see the dot? That means it's a curveball. I said, I could see the curveball. I could see the ball coming all the way into hitting the bat. And I got great at visualization, where I always thought I was pretty good. And I think most of us go, yeah, I dream, I visualize. To what degree? Because you know this from working with top athletes. Even my MLB players that are pretty good players, they visualize. But you ask an A-Rod about his visualization, he sees the stitches. He can see the stitches hit the bat and change direction coming off the bat. So another big gift for me was that. And but I did, in terms of emotionally and mentally, it was devastating to me because my first dream ended. And there's no playbook on what do you do in your life at that time when your first big dream ends. How do you pivot? How do you get excited about something new? Because oftentimes our dreams, our relationships, our careers become a part of our identity. And our identity isn't who we are, it's what we do or who we're with. And that's a dangerous place to be, as you know, because we know so many people, once they lose who they're with or what they do, they don't know who they are. And that's who I had become. And so I've worked very hard at connecting my identity to my faith and to who I am as a man, not what I do or what I produce or the external results or who I'm even in a relationship with or who I'm around. My relationships with God and with me, and those are the two primary things in my life. Of course, my wife and my family, but my identity shouldn't be connected to the things I do or achieve all the time.
I love that. Hey, if Tim Tebow could play in the major leagues, I think you have a shot still.
You never know, right? Like, hey, listen, Tim, maybe right now, Tim's slightly faster than me. Okay, I might give him that. Maybe a little stronger. But it's close, man. And we need a 50-year-old center fielder just to give people hope. So if the Red Sox are listening, I'm your man.
I love that.
Can I tell you something crazy about that? How God is?
I believe it.
Okay, I said I've only said this one other time in my life about playing center field for the Red Sox. Ever. One other time. The guy who runs the clubhouse for the Red Sox heard the podcast I was on. I may have his job wrong, so if I'm offending him, I'm sorry. That's not right. He's a coach for the Red Sox. Excuse me. I can't believe I just said. He's a coach he hears me say it. He goes, hey, next season, when the virus is gone, I want you to come out and take BP with the team. He's a coach for the Red Sox. I'm not exaggerating. This is true. So you should put things out into the world because prayers are answered.
So good.
So what if I go light it up, Jon? What if I take a couple over the Green Monster? They may say, hey, man, we're putting you in. You never know.
I think they'll see it and go, we got to have this guy.
You got to have this guy.
I've seen your golf swing. You post on Instagram. Love following you on Instagram. Your story is amazing. It's a lot of fun. You'll learn a lot. Everyone, if you're not following Ed's story on Instagram, incredible. One of the best out there. But you show yourself playing some golf, and I'm like, this guy's swing is awesome.
Oh, thank you.
When did that start from a golf standpoint? Obviously, you're a natural great athlete because you don't have a swing like that unless you're a great athlete. So did you start channeling your energy into golf a little bit after baseball?
I had a mentor, Jon, at one of the first places I had a little bit of success say to me, he goes, Ed, rich men play golf. And I said, well, I don't play golf. He says, let me say this to you again. Rich men play golf. And what he was actually telling me was, you need to get out there because you'll meet this is when I was young. You meet some really successful people on a golf course. You can spend 4 or 5 hours with somebody that's a stranger, as you know, and you're going to turn them into a friend over 4 or 5 hours. And so I've met lots of great associations. For me, golf is at this stage of my life is more about the fellowship, more about the conversations with my buddies. And that's really where it began. So I didn't want to go out and to me, golf was boring. 4 or 5 hours out there. There's no running. You don't throw. Didn't take advantage of anything I thought I was decent at doing, but I'm competitive. If I'm going to play something, I want to get pretty good at it. And I ended up playing a lot with former pro athletes who are all very competitive, who are all very good players. So just not to embarrass myself, I've had to get pretty good at playing, but I appreciate the compliment on my very strange swing. Thank you.
When did you start applying the vision techniques for business?
That's a great question. A combination of circumstances happened. So I had all these techniques in baseball, but because my IQ is not very high, I'm not being humble about that. It really isn't. I didn't connect that I should do it in business. And then I was somewhere and I ended up being at a Tony Robbins event. And he started talking about some of these very similar things in very general terms compared to the specificity that I had learned with it in sports. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe I've not been using my reticular activating system to find clients, to filter the reality that I want, to hear the conversations I need to hear, to see the dreams and specificity that I have. And so I started doing that when I was working at an orphanage. My dad's drinking also got me that job. I was working part-time at an orphanage that I loved. I was full-time there, part-time in my business. And while I was there, I started applying those techniques. And a very young man, I was making six figures part-time in my business. And I'm like, I have to probably go pursue this full-time. And that has been the key. You're asking, I know why you're asking me this. The key for me is I did grow up with low self-esteem, low self-confidence. I'm not an overly big guy, meaning I'm not 6'4" or anything like that. I had to really try to transform myself. And so I had to learn basic personal development principles and my faith combined to just be a baseline functioning person, candidly. But then once I got there, I sort of became addicted because I am an addictive, competitive type A type guy. And I started going, I'm going to get great at this. This will be in my advantage. And success isn't talent, it's skills. It's okay that I'm not super talented because I'm not, but I can develop these skills. I can develop these habits that other people don't have. And if I do the things other people aren't willing to do, I'm going to get things other people aren't going to get. And that's still to this day sort of what I hold on to.
What was that business that you were doing where you said it was part-time and you said I should make it full-time?
I was doing two. I was doing a real estate business where I was starting to buy and flip homes, learning to do that. And then I was in a financial services business where I recruit and develop leaders in that business. And I was doing them both simultaneously, which was really challenging because the financial one forced me to do public speaking, which was a great fear of mine. Ultimately, that was another gift. It taught me about leadership and having to develop my own ability to transfer skills to other people. So it's one thing to be able to develop skills yourself. Can you become a great teacher and transfer those skills? Jon Gordon, who's probably my favorite coach in sports all the time, really saw himself not as a motivator, but as a teacher. And so I started to kind of take on that persona of someone who would teach people things. And so both of those businesses at the same time challenged me. And the one thing I do have that I'm pretty decent at is I like a challenge. Like knowing I was going to do this with you today, I'm not kidding you because I respect you so much. I have a lot on my plate today. This is the most important thing I'm doing today. And because I admire you so much, I went to bed last night and I prayed a little bit about it and got clear because the challenge of delivering for you mattered to me. And challenges are still to this day what kind of get me up and get me going. And I've learned lately not to be very long-winded about it, but as I start to break down the people that I really admire that are friends of mine and some that are at a distance, you take a guy like a Tom Brady, he is constantly finding new ways to challenge himself, new things to put a chip on his shoulder, new things to go achieve. And for me, I've connected achieving these challenges with glorifying God because I am so average and ordinary that when I do achieve something, it should be so obvious to other people that it's not me, that it's my way, because it's my form of ministry to some extent is overcoming challenges and then giving the credit to God when I do it. And so to me, that just never ends. It's not something that I want to go, okay, I'm done doing that. I always want to do that. And so that's sort of my driver.
I love that because that's what I often ask too is, God, use me to glorify you and have my life glorify you. So I love that we're on the same page with that. And when I was on your podcast, I felt the same way. And people to this day say, I get feedback all the time about being with you and our podcast together, and very special.
Listen, I got to tell you, I've done a ton of them, and I would never disrespect other people that have been on the show, but I'll just say this. That was a very special conversation. And the reason is that you have something really powerful. Obviously you're this great anointing. You're an unbelievable communicator, but it's your humility combined with your authenticity. Like you're willing to say things about yourself that a lot of people aren't willing to admit. They might not always put themselves in a positive light. And because you do that, people connect with you and they go, wow, I'm a sinner too. Oh, I've made mistakes too. Oh, I have these fears too. And that's what makes you so redeeming to people when they listen to you. And so I still hear about it today. Last week, we got more DMs about it, even last week, which was, I don't know, 8 shows ago.
That's awesome. And
yeah,
you are the same way, telling us your story, telling us your backstory. I would have never known you didn't think of yourself as talented, because you see your gifts, you see what you're doing, you see the impact you're having, you see your incredible messages. I mean, your speaking is phenomenal. Your messages are phenomenal. Your voice is phenomenal. Everything is great. You would never know that this is something you were scared to do.
Again, I have to interject, and I know this isn't all about faith, but when I'm around you, I feel more inspired to talk about faith, which says something about you. But I have to just say that I was driving yesterday and I got a call from a person I don't know very well, who's not a person of faith, but someone I admire from a distance. I won't say who they are. And they got my number from another friend and just said, hey, I heard you speak. And I'm going to brag for a minute, but it'll finish okay. He said, I don't know what planet you're from, but I've never heard anything like that in my life. And he goes, I moved to tears. Then I wanted to run through a wall and I just want to meet you. It's a very well-known guy. And he goes, how do you do it? And I said, I'm going to be honest with you. Oftentimes when I walk out there, it's not me. The Holy Spirit takes over. These words come to me. I don't know where they come from. And I told him, I said, I actually feel warm. And I said, it's one of the great confirmations of my faith is when I'm speaking on stage. And I happen to just want to say this with everybody. When you're working in your chosen giftedness, whatever it is, if it's nurturing, caring, loving, math, humor, beauty, resiliency, whatever your giftedness is, when you're working in it, it's such a beautiful connection to God when you're utilizing the really special gifts he's given you and to the advantage of other people in him. And that's one of the ones for me. And what I'm doing, it's like, sometimes I walk off the stage and I don't think I did well like you do. But then there are times you go, where in the world? Wow, God, you're awesome. Thank you. Because it wasn't written down. You weren't going to say it that way. And then it just comes out. And so it's one of the big confirmations of my faith is stage speaking for me.
I love that. Let's talk about your rise in business. So you start out doing this financial services.
Yep.
Did you ever think you were going to be as successful as you are? Because you've had massive, incredible success. Where did it start? And then how did it grow? Can you just give us a story of that?
Yeah, it started when I was very young. I did make some money young. I had some setbacks. My family's not naturally sort of dreamers, nor very material oriented. So we didn't take vacations as a kid. We never talked about success. That wasn't my family. Be a good human being. Love your family. End of story. Which is a pretty good foundation, right? So no, I was not a very big dreamer, but I did start to make some money early in my life. And I did little things. Like I learned these lessons to go touch my dreams when I was young, meaning maybe this sounds materialistic, but I'd say, babe, if I do well this month, we're going to take Saturday night. We're going to go at the Ritz-Carlton, Laguna Niguel. We're going to have a night there. You're going to get a massage. I'll go play this rich men golf thing. And let's have a great bottle of wine and dinner. And we would just touch the dream for a night. But I touched it. And then we'd walk the beach. I say, let's get a house there someday. And then maybe 6 weeks later, I'd say, if I have a good month, if I don't, we won't go. There were consequences. If I have a good month, let's go out to La Quinta Resort. Let's have a night there. You go get a massage. I'll go golf. We'll get a bottle of wine. It'll be awesome. And we would touch these dreams. And I think your mind moves towards what it's most familiar with. So if your mind is most familiar with your worries, your anxieties, your fears, you will constantly gravitate in that direction. I started to interrupt those patterns by touching these dreams when I had a little bit of success, and my mind started to move towards those. Ironically now, I live by that Ritz-Carlton. I live in La Quinta, California. I live in these places that we went, just like I described to her, because I started to touch those dreams. And then it started to get momentum. And then I think this sounds, maybe it's wrong, but like I felt finally that I belonged there, meaning I didn't feel like a visitor. I didn't feel like an imposter after a while. And then it just shifted where like people wanted to come to me and get help from me. And that's when I found my groove, is when I got out of myself and I was like, yeah, I can teach you how I do this. I can teach you how I think. I can teach you these strategies. And that's when the momentum really took off, is when initially it was about me. Right. And then you can only get so far in life when it's about you. And once I got out of that sort of infancy thinking mode and I expanded and I became more of an abundance thinker, my world got bigger.
Touch your dreams is such a great concept. I've never heard that before. I love
Yeah.
that.
Well, it's true, Jon. You do move towards what you're thinking about regularly, and just little touches. I would try to get into these gated communities, sneak in. I'm a realtor. No, you're not. Okay, I'll come back in a week, and just get around these things. And then the other thing, my wife, because she could care less about these things, she's like, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take Wednesday mornings off and serve at our church full time. That was her dream. And so she would do that, and she'd say, wow, it would be so amazing if I didn't have to go. She was an executive assistant. It would be so great if I didn't have to go here and I could go to church 3 or 4 mornings a week. And when we have babies, I would love to be there for them at breakfast and lunch and dinner and not be at work. That was just her preference, right? Not that one's wrong or one's right. And so that was her form of touching the dream. And so she moved towards it as well, what she wanted.
What were a few keys that you can share now, looking back, that helped you rise in your business to get to the top of your profession and the top of your company?
Well, personally, working on my ability to influence people and transfer energy, which you're so great at discussing. So my ability to transfer and convey the right energy to people and getting very intentional about doing so. A second was my very detailed habits and rituals. I'm naturally a very lazy person. If you let me, I'd sleep in, I'd eat Cheetos, I'd watch Netflix. So I have to have habits and rituals that override my lack of discipline, quite frankly. And so it was building in these habits and rituals. It was my addiction, literally, to doing one more, which I'm writing about right now. So I'm a psycho. Like if I said, I'm going to make 10 phone calls today, I made at least 11. If I'm going to do 45 minutes on the treadmill, I did 46 minutes. If I told my daughter I love her once a day, I'm going to tell her one more time, twice a day. So it's my addiction to doing these things one more time that started to stack up, both physically, like I did more, and then in my identity, being able to say, I'm a guy who does one more. I'm a guy who does things other people aren't willing to do. If I keep doing this, I got to be able to deserve this. I think also I'm a saver. I was not, and at any age, attempting to impress people with things I couldn't afford. I saved and saved and saved. And that stack of paper literally has helped me a great deal as it's grown, and I've been able to acquire different things because I've been in a cash position. I know people talk about different ideas of getting wealthy. For me, the scriptures tell us, oh, no man, nothing. I almost take that completely literally. I'd rather not have payments on things and enjoy peace of mind than have an extra bedroom in my house, right? So those have been major, major principles for me in saving money. Because then, Jon, I got to do business because I wanted to do it, not because I had to do it. And people sense neediness. People sense the fact that you're in desperation. Desperation is a terrible energy to convey to people when you're trying to persuade them. So if you can begin to save money, even if it's a little bit, come from a position of strength, come from a position of confidence. I want to help you, but I don't have to help you. That was a major shift. And that started really in my mid-20s. By the time I was in my mid-20s, I was relatively okay with if it didn't work out, and they knew it, and then they chased me.
What do you tell someone if they do feel desperate and they're like, no, I am desperate. I do need this money. I do need this job. How can they change their energy and their mindset?
Yes, I've been there. You know the story. But when I did have a setback, I lost a home. My power got turned off in our apartment. And then worst thing you never want is my water got turned off. And you can have everything going bad. You don't have any water was terrible. So we couldn't cook. In the morning, I'd have to get my new bride. She'd get up. We'd have to walk down the stairs of an apartment we're now living in. When she married me, it was a house. There was a pool, outdoor pool, one shower, no curtain. I'd have to hold a towel up while my wife took a shower in the freezing cold, switch. We'd brush our teeth in there, then walk back to our apartment. I was completely ashamed, emasculated. And then so selling this dream all day and by night living a nightmare. So I do connect with that. I know what it's like to go to the ATM and pray there's at least 20 in the account so it'll spit the 20 out, because I've had many times where there was 14 and they don't give you 14 out of an ATM. So I know about that. What I did was I began to understand that, listen, my past doesn't equal my future. This is a chapter in the book of my life. Me and God are the authors, and I am going to begin to take on a new character. And so I'm going to quit telling myself this current story that's happening, because everything in my life has been temporary. Watching my dad just pass away, brother, like it occurs to me that everything in this life is temporary. Everything is. So my dad was passing. My dad was not worried about some deal he didn't do in 1977. He wasn't worried about the right front tire of his Acura being a little bit low, right? He wasn't worried about some disagreement he was in 4 years ago with a friend. It's all temporary. And so since that's the case, death gives us great perspective on life. And I sort of just started to understand that even young, like, I'm going to change my life. This is going to be an amazing story. This test I'm going through will legitimately be an amazing testimony. Here now I am 30 years later on your show, and it's my testimony. People will forget a lot of what I said today. You know what they're going to remember? They're going to remember my wife taking a shower in that outdoor shower. They're going to remember that. One of the most difficult moments of my life literally is my testimony now. And so, and I kind of had some sense this is going to be one heck of a story, man, someday. And I started to act like it. And the last thing I'll tell you is just do what's in front of you. Belichick has this great thing. He says, do your job. But he also says this, just block your guy. Just the next thing in front of you. Just do the next thing in front of you. God has a way of preparing you for the next room. So many people, Jon, are afraid, like, well, I don't know. What am I going to do if this? What if Henry Ford thought, I had to know everything to this day about building Ford Motor Company? He was like, well, imagine if he was thinking, where am I getting all these tires for these cars? No one makes tires. Who's going to fix the cars? Who's going to sell them? Right? How do we even get them somewhere to sell them? You just start. You just start. And the next room, then you figure that out. And you get in the next room and you figure that out. And you know this from your speaking. We've talked about it. You just get in the next room and you and God figure it out. And lo and behold, you step into a door and you're in another room. Then you're in another room. And here we are. Now we're in this room. So that was just one of the rooms I was in at that time. And those of you that are going through a difficult time, it's just the room you're in now. Step out of it. Stop telling the story about being in there because you're reinforcing your presence there. Don't make it your permanent home.
Man, I'm just being blown away right now because we have so many similarities. And also just when people think about what you've been through, I believe it makes them appreciate what you're enjoying now. So if people follow you, they see all your success, but they don't know that your wife was, showering in an outdoor shower. They don't know that you were not even being able to pay the bills at one point. Yeah. They just see your success now. They think it was always like that. And yet you've had to overcome so much. Does that give you humility, having been through those times now as you're having massive success? Does it give you humility right now?
Most of the time. I mean, all of us have to watch our egos a little bit, right? Like God's pretty good with me if I start getting that way of reminding me very quickly and very abruptly. But yeah, I'll be honest with you. Most of the time, like one cool blessing was that shower thing. So I'm looking right as we're talking, I'm looking out my window at the ocean, right? And I love that ocean. It's beautiful. And I can't honestly say this happens every morning because it doesn't, but it happens 70% of mornings. I'm very grateful for looking at that ocean. It hits me as an emotion when I see it. But there's a moment every morning, Jon, where like I turn the shower on and the water comes out and hits me in the face. That's something that small. And it takes me back to that time, seriously. And I just go, thank you, Lord. Like I'm grateful for very small things, which does help me with the bigger things. Yeah, I think it helps me with my humility. I think also having people around me who these things aren't that big a deal to them, that like if you have a jet and you're a terrible human being, like that's not a victory in life. I have a sister who I think success is you take these 2 or 3 gifts you identify and you use them in the service of other people. So my middle sister, Andrea, was born with diabetes. She's type 1. She's blind. So she was completely blind for a long time. Now she can see shadows, but she can't drive. She's a school teacher. I don't know what my sister makes here, but I bet it's a Christian school. I bet my sister doesn't make 40 grand a year. I don't know. But she is equally or more successful than me because she's using these gifts. She's unbelievably caring and kind and an amazing teacher. And she says this sweet spirit of ease. And a lot of these children come into her class that aren't from loving homes, I'm sure. And they get such love from her. So she's affecting lives. So the way I look at it is I'm successful with a lot of the external things. She's successful that way, but one is not more than the other, but we both are successful. I'm not saying I'm not successful. I think I am because I am using my gifts that God gave me in the service of other people. Just what I chose can be monetized. What she chose can't be.
When did you decide to say, I'm going to use my platform to help others? Massive Instagram, social media. You do a lot of talks. You do a lot of videos. it's clear that you're doing that out of the service of others, that you really are passionate about helping others grow and make a difference. You don't need to do that. You have all the money you could ever want. It's not like some guy who's trying to make money from this business. You clearly are driven by something greater. Can you talk about that? And when did you first know, I want to do this work and I want to use my life in this way to make an impact?
Yeah. Well, two things. I've had a heart attack, and that changed my perspective a little bit on like how long I may or may not have. I don't think I've ever told you that before.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So that was an awakening for me. Like, hey, it's about, you better get after making a difference in the world more than you are. And then also I had a conversation with Tony Robbins where he probably didn't even remember it because it was, not a big deal to him. But for me, it was, he's like, hey man, like you really should be doing this. Like this is, you come from a real place of experience. You articulate these things. And I'm like, yeah, I just don't want to be well known. Like I love my privacy. I'm like, Tony, you walk in somewhere and you can't have dinner with your family. I can walk in. And he's like, he literally, I won't use the word, but he's like, that's why you're an effing idiot. Because you say you want to help people, but you don't want to inconvenience yourself to do it. And I'm like, you know what? Fine. And literally on my balcony, I said, Max, give me that phone. What's this InstaFace thing? He's like, it's Instagram, Dad. I'm like, whatever it is, I'm going to make one of these videos. I called it InstaFace. I made a little video sitting on my balcony. I said, put that up in the internet to my son, who was 15 at the time. Funniest story, John. I got to tell you this, how little I knew. Puts it up. It gets like 3 likes and 5 views or something, right? But it was a good video. And I'm like, I'll do one tomorrow. So Tony tells me, he goes, listen, man, if you're going to do this, here's what I hear him say. You got to post at the right time of day. It's 2:00 in the afternoon. That's not the right time. You got to post in the morning, and you need to have hash browns on it. And I'm like, what did you say? He goes, this is what I hear him say. Post around breakfast time and make sure you got hash browns. So I go, Max, the reason my son, I said, Max, talk to Robbins. The reason this video didn't do anything, dude, there's no hash browns in the video. Max is like, I swear to you, this is 5 years ago. Max goes, Dad, what are you talking about? I go, look, Tony, who's the beast, says you got to do it at breakfast with hash browns. Somehow I'm thinking visually, or this is some Instagram algorithm deal. So the next morning, no joke, you go back in my Instagram feed, my second video, I'm eating eggs with hash browns. As I do my video, and it does absolutely nothing again. I call Robbins. I'm like, hey, this hash browns thing it's a joke. It doesn't even work. He goes, what the F did you say? I said, hash browns. He goes, it's hashtags, dumbass. I'm like, what exactly is a hashtag? He's like, oh my God. I had no idea what he was talking about. That's a true story. So to go from that to like millions of followers in like 3 years is bananas to me. But I decided to do it because, like, let's just be real. There's not that many people in the space who have had a track record. Most guys that are generating millions and millions of dollars don't have time to be making videos. My businesses are the types of businesses where I could find windows in my day to create content. I'm not a day-to-day CEO any longer. So it allows me to do that as I'm investing in businesses.
What do you love about building people up the way you do?
I like, that's a great question. You ask stuff no one asks me. I see people, I think, here's what I think a Christian does. See, I think God sees us. He loves us as we are, but he sees us in the image and likeness that he made us in. So he sees the ultimate version of us, so to speak. And I think as a person who's a Christian, I enjoy seeing people as they could be, not as they are. Seeing the best version of them and then helping them speak and see that into existence. So I literally enjoy meeting somebody. I think I do it with you. As great as you are, I think I see you even greater with more potential and capacity maybe than you do. And that's even in our brief interactions. So it's a gift to me to see the real person there, minus their fears, minus their negative experiences, minus their limiting beliefs, and begin to see that and speak it to them and challenge them that way and give them the information they're ready for at that point. So I enjoy it. Now, it's hurt me in my life, candidly. A lot of people have let me down. My wife's like, look, he's just not that great of a guy. Stop thinking it. I've been hurt that way. I'm sure you have as well. But I'd rather be hurt by the 10 or 15% who really let me down than miss the 85 or 90% of the people who have never had anybody in their life let them know how magnificent they are, how great they are. Because if they got that, we'd all be a better army of Christ. We'd all be better for serving people. And even if you're not a person of faith, It would just be a better world right now if everyone knew how beautiful and wonderful they were. We would treat one another better. We're at an all-time low, I think, in humanity, at least in the last 100 years, of how we treat one another. And it's because of how we view one another. And the reason we view one another that way is because of how we view ourselves. Because we view ourselves with such, and some people truly despise themselves. And they're afraid, and they're scared, and they're insecure. So there's got to be some people in life who are like, hey, you're remarkable. And they're like, well, you don't even know me. Well, I know God, and he made you, and I'm watching you, and I can see some of these things. They're obvious if you just stop and be present with somebody. They're not that complicated. You meet somebody right away. You and I have mutual friends. Like, the guy is hilarious. What a gift of Erwin, for example. Like, what an anointing this man has to communicate. What a kind man he is, right? Like, so these things, my sister, you might meet my sister. She can't see. She's not dynamic. You spend 5 minutes, you're like, what a loving, nurturing. Her nurturing ability is 3 billion times better than mine. What a gift. What an incredible gift. So I just enjoy seeing the world that way. Do you get let down? Yeah. Do people hurt you? Yeah. But if that's the price, I'll take it.
And it's such a great lesson because you make people feel good, you encourage them, and you love them. And your love for them makes them feel loved and then love you back. I got to say, when I was on your podcast, you encouraged me on that podcast. You made me feel great about doing that interview with you, the feedback we got together, the energy we shared. And after that, I felt, hey, Ed thinks this about me. I've accomplished a decent amount. But when I heard you say that, for some reason, coming from you, I got to be honest, it made a difference for me. And I believe there's something about you, your energy and your belief in them really does encourage people. And it makes them feel like they can do more than they ever thought possible.
Thank you.
Because of your belief.
You know, as a father or a leader in a business too, Jon, once you've established that territory with somebody, as a leader, if you're a coach or a mother or father listening to this, or a business leader, it gives you permission to challenge them to rise to that standard. When you have not really believed in me, yet you're constantly challenging and pushing me, you're pushing me somewhere. When you really believe in me, you've established that belief, you're pulling me. And there's a difference. And so it's, as a leadership principle in business, I just found it much easier to just let someone know how much you love, care, and believe in them sincerely. Then you can challenge them. But if you've not sown that seed, like some of the great coaches you've worked with, how do some of them get away with driving people so hard? And other ones, they push even a little bit and the team resents it and revolts. I believe the coach who can drive you that hard comes from a place where you know how deeply he believes in you and your potential. That gives you that territory to lead and to push. So it's also a business principle.
That is really key. No doubt about it. I've seen that with a lot of coaches because they love their players. They love their team. The team knows it. So then they earn the right to challenge them. They almost get permission to do it because of that. But so many coaches, if they're always driving, the players tune them out. So you just nailed it. But it's more than that for you. There's no doubt that you really do see the best in others. You really do see what's great in them. You really do encourage them. What is something that you love to share that you've learned from the people that you've worked with? Like, I'm sure you're always learning from people that you're working with, helping them. What have your kids taught you about leadership, about growth? I know I'm a better person having been a father to 2 kids, and it's challenging. I'll admit it is challenging to raise 2 kids, but what have you learned as a father and as a leader?
As a father, I've learned patience, and I've also learned not to try to make everybody like me. You know, my son's very different from me, yet he's my favorite human. You know, my wife and my daughter as well, but my son's very different than me. And when he was younger, I'm like, I wish he was a little bit more intense like his dad, you know, and there's an intensity there. He's a better man than me. He's just kinder, you know. And so I've learned patience with my children. I've learned what we've been talking about, that, man, my children need to know they're the most important priority in the world. I had this habit, man, it broke my heart a couple of times, Jon, where when my daughter would walk in the room, I'd be on my phone. I go, just a second, honey. And I'd be back in my phone again. And what that tells her is who's ever in that phone is more important than her. Well, I did that to my daughter probably 50 times. What's it like as a little girl having your daddy do that 50 times? And so I learned to make them a priority. And that's what I've learned from the people that I enjoy being the most around are the most present with me. And my children want me present. My children want my love. They want my belief. They want me to listen to them. when you are someone who gives advice like you and I do, you have to be really careful to not do it too much. And I do that with my wife sometimes too much. Honey, that's not what we need to be thinking about. She doesn't need me coaching her all the time, right? And neither does everybody around you. I've learned that from the successful people I've coached. I've learned they're all human. They all have insecurities. They all have fears. They're all seeking truth in their life is what I've learned from all of them. And I've learned that anybody can achieve anything in their life if they spend enough time at it, if they have a little bit of giftedness towards it, and they'll have enough patience. And that's the thing that my children taught me is I want everything now, right now. And there's God's time and there's my time. That doesn't mean I don't want to push the envelope. I want to meet in the middle, but it's going to be God's time anyways. So why create all this anxiety and strife trying to always make it my time? I think that answers you.
Yes. Yeah. No, that's phenomenal. So many people are struggling right now. Fear, anxiety, stress. This is Positive University.
Yep.
When you're surrounded by negativity, adversity, and challenges, how do you stay positive? And also, what advice do you have for so many people right now who are struggling, and how can they move forward in a positive way?
Well, this may sound corny, but when you're feeling helpless, get helpful. Get as helpful as you can. And it's the antidote to helplessness. And I know that sounds corny and hokey. I promise you that that's the case. If you get helpful, helplessness sort of dissipates. So that's one thing that you need to be doing right now. The second thing is, these may sound like basic things, but you need to drink a ton of water. Believe it or not, overly hydrating yourself has a big impact on how you feel and what you think about. These are just practical things. Third thing is move your body. Depression, fear, anxiety is a physical move you make. It's hunched over. It's contrasted, right? The breathing is shallow. Move your body, take a walk, do some jumping jacks, move around, go work out. You can't simultaneously be moving your body in the same ways that joy and ecstasy and passion manifest themselves and feel those negative emotions. That's that. Then the next thing is this: you got to take massive action, and it's got to be focused, massive action. Sometimes it's taking the first smallest possible step. I was interviewing Jocko Willink, who you know is one of the great SEALs of all time. I said, Jocko, give me something that I wouldn't think of when he goes, I think you need to be decisive. But he goes, and then I take the smallest possible step first. So he goes, if I think there's we're being ambushed, I might have 2 guys go on the flank over to the left. I used to want to take 15 dudes, right? Shock and all. He goes, I'll take 2 dudes, smallest possible action, get their vantage point, then make the next move. Why is that so? It's been really important for me this last year. Why is that? Because sometimes the most major move, you're just physically not ready for. So what's a small move you could take right now in the direction to make a shift, being helpful, moving your body, being hydrated, and then take it with decisiveness? It's okay to make mistakes. One of the reasons that you're in the situation you're in your mind is, I made a mistake. I made this error. Something's happened to me, and you're gun shy. Fire the weapon. In combat, the number one reason a soldier is killed is they don't fire their weapon. And the reason they don't fire their weapon is that lack of belief they can hit the target. Is that not incredible?
Wow.
So we lose soldiers because they don't fire, and they don't fire because they don't have confidence they can hit the target. So that's where you're at right now. If you're hurting, you got to fire the weapon. You got to go. You got to take a small step right now. And you're going to find out those small steps add up to something eventually. But we're not going to know that. And the longer you sit here in life, the longer you sit and wallow in it, the longer it is to get back and going again. So it's okay to get knocked down. The question is this: you can't take a 10 count. You got to get up. You got to get up. And you got to take steps, and you got to do it now. And I think listening to Jon, listening to myself, pick 2 or 3 people that you can listen to, not 10, where you're just sitting around listening. Take 2 or 3 people who move you, inspire you, can coach you, give you tools, and start to do the things they say. And I'd like to think I could be on that list.
You are on that list, and you should be on that list. You should be on everyone's list, because your advice is always incredible, very practical, and really help people move forward, which is what they need right now. What about critics? What about negativity from others? I'm sure you've had criticism. I'm sure you deal with them even now. The higher you rise, the more critics you have. How do you deal with critics?
I don't like them. That still bothers me. I wish I were stronger about it. Usually people that are criticizing you, though, are below you. Very, very rarely will somebody in front of you, and I say below you, I just mean they're not progressed past wherever you are either. So very rarely has anybody criticized me who's more successful than me or, happier than me. It is always a reflection on them. And the more and more I see it, like gossip is one of these things. It's just like, it's the most prevalent time ever where people gossip. I know that close friends of mine do it. I walk out of a room and I know they talk about me for whatever the reason is, just like they do for you. I've just learned, I said this thing about my dad earlier. You guys, so many things you're making big in your life are so small. And it may sound creepy to do, but ask yourself if this is going to matter in 5 years. Ask yourself more powerfully, is this going to matter on my deathbed? Like when I've got 10 breaths left, is this going to matter to me? What Joe Blow said about my Instagram post, what someone thinks about the fact that I'm going through a bankruptcy, right? Someone thinks about the fact that my marriage isn't going great right now, or what I wear, or my attitude, or how I feel about myself. Can't you be bigger than that? You are bigger than that. You're bigger than your thoughts. You're certainly, God and you are bigger than your thoughts. And I can promise you this, you and God are definitely bigger than their thoughts. And if you can just remember that, get above it. I know it hurts. I know it wounds us. It's a reflection on them. Because by the way, the higher you climb, the more haters you're going to get. The more people are going to talk about you. The more people that have an opinion. And when you look really closely, they're not happier than you. They're not more successful than you. Because if they were, they wouldn't have time to be talking about you. And remember this too. Even though they said something, they actually don't even mean it most of the time. A lot of the haters that comment on my stuff when I message them, they'll go, I didn't even know you would read this. I didn't mean it. I was just in a bad mood today. Someone did that this weekend on something. Like, I think they were shocked. I saw it. And I'm like, wow, that's not very nice. You go, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. But remember this, guys, they may say something, but here's the truth. Most people aren't thinking about you. You know what they're thinking about? What you're thinking about them. That's what they're thinking about most of the time. They just said something. It's their own little weakness leaking out. And then they go on with their life and they're not thinking about you. They're thinking about their problems, their worries, their fears. It's just something that leaked out of them for a minute. And you're making it into this big old deal that means nothing. Now, if you have someone who's antagonistic against you, who's conspiring against you, that's different. And you need to weed that out and deal with that and address it. There's a difference between a hater and a critic and an antagonist. An antagonist is somebody you need to confront. You need to hand that one right up front. If they're doing harm to you, that's something you don't avoid. You confront that.
As we come to a close, with all the success you've had, what continues to drive you to this day? You don't need the money. You already have incredible influence. What's driving you every day right now?
God, you're the best interviewer, man. I've linked my bliss and my happiness for the most part at this stage of my life to the service of other people and contributing. And I don't even like when I say that, Alex. It sounds more profound and like a lot more sophisticated than it really is. It's just, at my age, I'm 50 next month. Like, what makes me happy? Okay. Because there's many days like this ocean, my family will be out kind of playing in the pool or the ocean, and I'm in here doing some of these things. They're like, by the way, I'm with my family a lot, but the truth is, like, what makes me happy? This, being with my family, and this. So to me, I've linked my bliss and happiness to making a difference. And I am like really concerned about the world. I'm not called to be a minister. It's just not my calling. So this is sort of a form of ministry for me. I feel home when I do it. I feel alive when I do it. I feel happy when I do it. And so I'm like every human being. I'm chasing happiness. I'm chasing bliss. I've just linked doing this to that. And it used to be $100 million or $500 million or a jet or a house. And by the way, if you want those things, don't let anybody tell you they don't make you happy. They do. Those things, they just don't make you fulfilled. But you can get temporary happiness. Hey, I get on that airplane, I'm damn happy most of it. It's hard to get on a Global Express and go, I'm miserable, but I'm not fulfilled, right? This fulfills me doing this. And so there's lots of things you can do to be happy. What fulfills you? And for me, this is fulfilling. And so that's what drives me, brothers. I'm not different than any other human being. I want happiness and I want fulfillment. And, golf is great. Makes me happy. It doesn't fulfill me, right? Money makes me happy, I guess. Like, I've been happy rich and I've been happy poor. Happy rich is better, right? But it ain't that much better, right? It's not that much better. Being fulfilled and making a difference for people and having the blessing of someone's willing to listen to me. Like, someone's willing to listen to me. For 40 years of my life, I walked in a room. No one wanted to listen to me. No one wanted to hear me. Now I've had 10 years of people want to really hear from me. What a gift. What a blessing. It's not lost on me. So I better improve. I better grow. I better be a good example or I'll lose it. And I'd prefer not to lose this great blessing. I think that answers you.
Totally. And I love the distinction between happiness and fulfillment. Never heard of that before. And I love that. I'll take that with me forever because that is such a great fulfillment. Like the plane makes you happy. Like you said, it makes me happy. Hey, I saw your new plane and that would make me happy to fly on that plane.
we can all sound better than that. Hey, listen, anybody ever bought a new pair of shoes? You're like, this is a happy moment right now, right? You got your new car. This is a happy moment, but it's not fulfilling. It doesn't last forever. But I think the worst thing ever is a guy gets rich and goes, it's nothing. Just be happy where you're at. What a terrible thing to say to people. That's not even true. So anyway.
Increases happiness, but also knowing that it's temporary and fleeting and you don't want to chase it. You don't want to make it your life's goal because then you'll miss out on the fulfillment, which should be your life's goal, right?
It'll be very empty.
All right. Last question. What are you excited about as you move forward? What are you looking forward to?
I'm excited. For me personally, I'm excited about my friendships. I'm excited about new friends I've made, guys like you that are just new in my life. We all go through stages in our life where my circle got real small. So maybe the more notoriety I got, I clinged to a very small circle of people, which is beautiful. But I'm excited about that expanding now again with people that I trust, that I want in my life. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited about the book that I'm writing right now that you were gracious enough to refer me to your publisher that I'm now working with. I'm excited about that. I'm also excited about all the potential in the world. So what this virus has done is it's sped the economy up 10 years and all of our minds have opened. And even though it's been a really difficult thing, we've lost all these folks. It's put the economy in turmoil, political turmoil, but I'm excited about we've made a 10 or 20 year leap into the future because of it. So people's minds have been expanded about how can I do business? I can recruit geographically from not just 20 minutes from my house. I can work anywhere I want. I can have a different business. I can start a business that doesn't require a lot of capital. I can be on social media and start to reach people in a way that I could have never reached them before. So I'm excited about what this new world's going to look like the next 10 years that we just stepped into. Autonomous vehicles, virtual reality, avatars, real avatars where we communicate. This thing we're doing right now, in a matter of a few years, we're like, we used to look on a screen on a computer to talk to each other. Can you remember when we did that? That's going to be like before remote controls on TV. So it's just accelerating very quickly. And so if we can come up with a virus, an anecdote to a virus, a vaccine in a year, imagine now what might start to happen with things that have killed millions of people like heart disease and cancer. Can we accelerate those things? So I'm a very optimistic person about the world and where we're at. And the last thing as a person of faith is I just feel like there's this time in people's lives where they're reaching the conclusion that what matters most is not these material things. What matters most is not their Instagram post. And they're starting to find out again in their lives, there's this consciousness change where we're all in this together. We're brothers and sisters. And where am I going when I leave here? Because we've lost so many people. And what's the meaning of my life? And I think you're going to see a return to people seeking God in a way that's bigger and better than ever. So all of that stuff, God's reach through technology, our reach in business, fires me up.
Man, I'm fired up. That world sounds pretty good to me right now.
It is. It is a good world.
It's funny because your perspective really determines how you see the world, and how you see the world determines the world you see. Because right now there's a lot of people that are not thinking of the world in that way. They're worried about the future. They're fearful of the future, but you're seeing it different.
I see a big future, and I know that's easy to say from where I sit. Believe me, but I hope that it gives you some hope and a glimpse. This is just a chapter in the book, and we got to get up and write the next one. We have to.
Ed Mylett talking about friendships. I'm so glad that we became friends only a few months now, but feel like I've known you forever. I came from a middle-class family as well, lower middle class, not a great upbringing like you. Identify so much with your story and just along the journey, very, very similar paths. A son who's very different than me, doesn't have that killer instinct that I had as an athlete. So college athlete, we've had so many similar journeys, similar desires to make a difference. Faith infuses our lives. So I'm just glad we met, brother. It really is incredible meeting you and connecting with you. And I love that we talked about this. I know so many people are going to benefit from this podcast. Can't wait to share it out there, and can't wait to see what you do next, because you are one of the most powerful, impactful people on the planet. And I'm just thankful I know you.
Thank you, brother. God bless you. The feelings are 100% mutual. I'm looking forward to seeing you soon.
All right, I'll see you soon. Take care.
Love you, brother.